Welcome back to the Meet the Press podcast. I'm Jared MacDonald, joined as always by Tyler Dixon. And I know what you're probably thinking. This isn't a Sunday night Facebook Live or YouTube Live. It's not a Monday morning podcast drop on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. This is a midweek special edition episode. We're going to try to start doing them with special guests. Our first guest is a native of Winchester, Kentucky. He has worked at places like the Oldham Era and the Bowling Green Daily News in the sports department, and is now a contributing editor at Horse Racing Nation. What better time to have him on here than Derby Week? Mr. Brad Stevens, welcome aboard.
Yeah, good to be here, guys.
You know, Brad, oh, Tyler, go ahead.
No, I'm jealous. You guys, I'm not in Kentucky for Derby Week. This is the first, and I've admitted prior to coming on, I've never been to a Derby, but being in Kentucky, there is a certain buzz around this week. Like I don't feel like you always want to admit it. Like you don't want to say, oh, we're going to play up to that. There's a buzz. Like you go around town and you see, oh, people are doing this for the Derby, that for the Derby. It's a fun thing. Like it's a thing everybody can get behind.
Yeah, well, I'm actually not in Kentucky right now either. I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, but I'll be going up Saturday for the Derby. So, yeah, look forward to You talk Derby here, and it's kind of going over people's heads. But I look forward to see it back in the bluegrass on Saturday.
You know, Brad, you have a different experience than us because I'm not from Kentucky. I'm from Maine. Tyler's not from Kentucky either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a guy that grew up in the state, went to school in the state at Western Kentucky, worked in the state, as a sports reporter, sports editor at different papers around here. What's your experience with the Derby like? When did you first start getting into it? What stands out to you about Derby Week?
Yeah, I think it's just always been a part of my life, and I guess maybe I kind of took it for granted over the years. But I never went to the Derby until I was covering it. But I just remember, like in elementary school, like we would each get assigned one of the horses that was in the field, and they would have us, paint draw like the jockey silks. I think one year I might have gotten Charismatic the year he won, actually, so I was pretty fired up about that. And because his silks were green and yellow, and I was a Packers fan, and he's still a Packers fan, so that had me fired up. But no, in high school we would go to Keeneland actually on Derby Day, and they put it on the big board there, and you can go. All the betting windows were open, concessions, everything. So it was just like another day at Keeneland. You're just watching it all on simulcast from Churchill, and then I finally got to cover it in 2014 when I was at the Oldham Era weekly newspaper just outside of Louisville. We had Sean Bridgemahan was a jockey who lived in Goshen, which is like Oldham County, Jefferson County line, but in Oldham County, and there were a couple other Oldham connections. So it was cool to be part of that from that angle of it. And then I covered it 1 year for the Daily News, and now I've done 2 for Horse Racing Nation. So yeah, it's cool. I've gotten to see it from different angles, from being one of the reporters who, just shows up on Derby Day, kind of flies in and, hey, I'm here to cover it, versus actually being with Horse Racing Nation to be a little more in the day-to-day of it and, seeing it from that angle. So, and it kind of reflects to the people that are there. I mean, some people there are, hardcore. They're watching TVG, 7 days a week, and, got Twin Spires, fired up all hours a day, and others that, that's their only horse racing experience of the year. So, when you have an event that has 150,000, 160,000 people, you're going to get a little bit of all types. That's certainly the case here.
On Saturday, the 148th running of the Kentucky Derby, post time approximately 6:57 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:57 p.m. Central Time. If you're any other time zone, you can do the math yourself. What excites you about this one, Brad? As a guy that is kind of in it day to day now.
I don't know how to say this, but I'm kind of hoping we have one that's just like normal. That's just controversy free. I mean, you look at the last 3. So I've covered each of the last 3 Derbies. And so you look at 2019, that was the maximum security one. There was a steward's inquiry, for interference in the turn, 22-minute review, and, Country House is elevated, finished second, never threatened to win the race, but is elevated to the win. And honestly, looking back, I still think that was the correct call. It's just wild that happened in the Kentucky Derby. Right. And then, 2020, I was there with maybe 500 or 600 other people because of the pandemic, and they ran behind closed doors. And it was on Labor Day. It was just so strange. And then last year you think you have a straightforward Derby, Medina Spirit leads gate to wire under Johnny V. You think, okay, well, that's that. And then, a week later, Baffert is having a press conference outside of a stall. And then he's going on Fox News talking about cancel culture, and it kind of goes downhill from there. And then and it took until this past February when the KHRC finally disqualified Medina Spirit, and Churchill promoted Mandaloun to last year's Derby win. So, I think I'm just hoping we get one that's, we go there, we watch it, we all enjoy it, and we leave knowing, okay, that's the result, and can't wait till next year.
This is what happened. And that's it. I mean,
yeah,
you are right. There has been some tumultuous years, the last few years.
Yes.
Is it still going to be a normal year for you? Because even if it does run without a hitch like some of these years past, there's still no Bob Baffert in it this year, which, he's a big name. He's a recognizable name. Churchill Downs, barred him from entering horses that enter any of their tracks through about mid-2023. How does that kind of weigh into everything that's happening this week and weekend?
Yeah, it's an interesting subplot throughout the Derby season. So, the way they do the entry into the Kentucky Derby, there's 20 spots, and it's, Churchill Downs has a point system where there's points preps that start in September, run through April, and, the top 4 finishers, these races get points toward the Derby. And Baffert had horses in all of these races, and they were just, when they would finish, it would come up on the, press release would get saying 0 points. And so it was just this really weird phenomenon of he was still present on the Derby trail with Messier and Taba and some of these others, but they weren't getting any points. And then finally, I think the owners, when it got to about mid-March, realized, okay, this isn't going to happen for him. We need to move our horses. And so Tim Yachtine has taken over training duties. He was Baffert's former assistant, has taken over training duties for the 2 that are in the field Saturday. So people have taken to call them the Baff teams. But I mean, gosh, think of your Tim Yachtine. You're a guy who's, you're a trainer in California. Obviously, done a lot in your career, but nothing on the level of this. And now you're thrust into a spotlight. So that'll be a really interesting subplot come Saturday.
I know one that a lot of people around here are excited about is Epicenter. A horse trained by Steve Asmussen, owned by Winchell Thoroughbreds, but it was actually born here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. What do you know about that horse and its chances here Saturday?
Yeah, I think Epicenter has a big chance, and that's actually my pick for the Kentucky Derby. So obviously it's a little bit of Bowling Green home cooking there, but now he's so he took the Louisiana route to the Kentucky Derby, running at Fairgrounds in New Orleans. And if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, the Fairgrounds circuit has been really strong. It's, over the years, it's kind of gone back and forth. Florida produced a bunch of Kentucky Derby winners. New York back in the day, California. Different areas going to have hot streaks, but the Fairgrounds the last few years has kind of seen a kind of a golden era as far as producing horses that are contending in some of these Triple Crown races. And he won the Risen Star Stakes down there, which turned out honestly to be the best prep of Kentucky Derby season. Zandon was in it, Papa Cap, or several others, and then came back, won Louisiana Derby. Just seems like he's a really sharp horse. He stays forwardly placed, which is kind of the running style you need in this era of the Kentucky Derby. And then, kind of another subplot is that he's trained by Steve Asmussen, who has the most wins of any trainer in North American racing history, but not this one. So that'll be really interesting to see come Saturday.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to Steve Asmussen and joined him on a Zoom this morning with some other reporters. He said that, Epicenter is going faster sooner than some of his other horses that have run and had good showings in the Kentucky Derby, like Curlin, like Gunrunner, who went on to win Horse of the Year titles. He says, like, even at a slow gear, he's best described as a slinky, just extremely fluid, a great mover. Steve Asmussen, though, 0 for 23 at the Derby. He's won just about everything else, the all-time winningest trainer in North America. With him, I guess, what's your experience like working with him and watching him work in your position?
Yeah, it's just really impressive, his operation, because he has such a far-flung's the right word. But I mean, he has, if you look at the entries on a Friday in the summer, he's going to have horses running at 4 or 5 different tracks, and it's such a job to stay on top of all that. And of course, he has a huge staff that works under him. But and he's a guy who also kind of plays the game at a lot of different levels. So, if you look at, obviously he has horses, running, Epicenter, the second choice in the morning line for the Kentucky Derby, but he'll have horses running at, tracks in Iowa, Texas, and Louisiana, these other places, maybe kind of outside the focus of the racing world. And, from everything I've heard, he takes, just as much pride in that as he does, his horses that are, winning in Kentucky and New York. So obviously when you have a record like that, that's a reflection of, a lot of the people you have around you too. And it seems like he's assembled a really strong team.
Brett, whenever we often hear of trainers and stuff like that, and they show them on Derby Day, it's often older people. Not, I say older, 50s, 60s. It's guys that have been around the track. If you want, how does somebody break into this? Because I never feel like somebody said, like in you're a sports guy, you say in baseball, basketball, oh, this 16-year-old, he's really good. 17-year-old. How does that work in the training game? How does one kind of break into that scene? Because I mean, it's a pretty elite club once you get into it.
Yeah, a lot of these guys just kind of spend their lives around the track. You look at Brad Cox, he was the Eclipse Award winner last year as far as racing top trainer. He's a guy who was just around the track a lot growing up, and then when he got to his late teenage years, early 20s, he would go work for other trainers. And there's different jobs you can do around the stable other than just being the trainer, hot walking and just other kind of other tasks, and they have people that do that. And so you kind of break in that way. And then a lot of these guys, they either kind of move up the ranks, become like a top assistant trainer for a big stable, where they go out on their own. And some of those, they kind of rise through the claiming ranks, where a lot of the horses they're running are not the caliber we're going to see Saturday. They're the ones that are run on Wednesday afternoon in $5,000 claiming races. And I've got someone who's trying to join here.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, the fourth guest. But yeah, so it's it takes a lot of hard work. It's you have to be someone who wants to get up, be there at the track at 5 o'clock in the morning, for training hours. And it's a kind of a 7-day-a-week job. And you talk to these guys, they don't take a lot of vacation throughout the year. I mean, it really is. It kind of becomes their lives. And so, for a lot of people, they may choose to do something more 9 to 5, like we'd like to do. But for the guys whose calling it is, that's what they do, and some of them had a lot of success with it.
I just picture like a second, third seat assistant college basketball coach that like lives on the road and like lives out of their car. And yeah, that's kind of like how I'm correlating in my head.
Yeah, well, you look at like Todd Pletcher, who he has 3 horses in the Derby. He has the favorite, the Kentucky Oaks, on Friday, and he's a Hall of Famer. He worked for a lot of years as one of the assistants to Dwayne Lucas, who was a Hall of Fame trainer, was probably the face of the sport during the 1990s and even the 80s into the 2000s. And Lucas back in the day had he had Pletcher, he had Dallas Stewart, he had Kieran McLaughlin, he had a few others that were all all those guys all learning from him, and they kind of go out and start their own stables, and their assistants go out on their own. So it's kind of like a coaching tree. It's like cool. People that worked for Rick Pitino for a lot of years, or Calipari, or Coach K, or whoever, and kind of go out and have their own careers. It's a similar career trajectory.
You were talking about Steve Asmussen and having pride in some of those places racing that, most people wouldn't, look at. A lot of people, the casual race fans, they look at the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont Stakes, and, outside of that, they don't care at all, if that. Working at the Daily News, how often did you make it down to Kentucky Downs? Because that's actually the first time I interacted with Steve Asmussen, was about the first week after I started at the the Bowling Green Daily News. I went down to Kentucky Downs and just kind of got thrown to the fire there.
Yeah, I got to go down a little bit, not a ton, because it was always during football season, and so it's just like their big days would be on Saturdays in September, and so I was, when I was on the WKU beat, I'd usually have a game on those days, or I'd be out doing something high school related. But I was able to go down a little bit. I actually went in 2018 when I was still at the Daily News. Mike Smith was there. He was doing like a big autograph session. He had just won the Triple Crown as Justified jockey that spring, and so he was signing. Had like prints of Justify that he was signing, and people were paying $20, whatever it was, for. And we got to sit around and talk to him, and that was really cool because he's a guy who's been in the game for a ton of years, has had success. But I do love Kentucky Downs. I went back this fall just as a fan. It's just I went one day as a reporter and one day just as a fan. But it's the coolest place. I mean, you can sit there, bring in a lawn chair, bring in your your Publix subs and your drinks or whatever, and just hang out for the day. And it's just very casual. It's a very different experience as compared to Churchill or Keeneland. But the purse money they run for. I mean, it's world class horses that are there. It's like it's kind of like it's the casual feel of like a county fair, but you're watching $1 million races in front of you. So it's a cool environment.
Come Saturday, do you think there's anybody that has a chance to surprise the field, surprise the fans there at Churchill Downs, or is it kind of going to be the favorites running at the front?
I don't see a lot of other horses that I think like a lot of the long shots in this year's field. I feel like they're long shots for a reason. The one that's kind of caught my mind a little bit is the horse in Simplification, who I think the morning line has him at 20-1. He won the Fountain of Youth Stakes at Gulfstream, and he was second to White Abario in both the Holy Bull Stakes and in the Florida Derby. And if you go back and watch the Holy Bull, he was probably the best horse in the race. He just got out of the gates terribly, and he made a huge rally just to finish second there. I remember watching that, thinking, okay, this is one to keep an eye on going forward. So I don't think he's like the most likely win candidate, but if you're looking for a bigger price, you can maybe if you have a ticket with like Epicenter or Zandon on top, and then you kind of want a bigger price there for your second or third slot. Simplification is the one that's kind of caught my eye. But yeah, other than that, I mean, like Crown Pride, I think might be interesting just from the fact that Japanese horses have had so much success internationally in the last 2 years. He got in through the UAE Derby, which has been not a productive Kentucky Derby prep at all in the last 20 years. The best finishing horse from that race is like sixth. But just the way the Japanese horses have been competing lately on big stages, it's kind of one that I'm a little bit intrigued by. Beyond that, Cyberknife won the Arkansas Derby for Brad Cox, but it's only 20-1. And it was kind of a weaker field this year in Arkansas as far as their preps goes. Maybe that's why he's a little bit higher than you might expect. I still look at Epicenter as the most likely winner, and Zandon's the morning line favorite, but he has his running style is like a deep closer type where he's just going to try to do all his running at the end. I just think that's really hard to do in a field of 20 horses where you have so much traffic in front of you, and all it takes is a couple of horses veering out in your way, and all of a sudden you're having to maneuver around them, and it's kind of breaks your momentum. So it'll be he'll have something to overcome. But if he does get a clear run, I mean, he's got quite a late kick, so he's definitely a win threat.
When you were talking about Kentucky Downs being like that casual fairgrounds type of feel, I was kind of going back in my head at the different tracks in the state that I've been to over the years, working in this job. My first one was Keeneland, and it was a perfect spring day, the Bluegrass Stakes. It was just, it was awesome there. It was nice. And then I go to, one Kentucky Derby. I believe it was 2018 when Justify won it, went on to win the Triple Crown. Had a totally different experience because I was in the infield. I bought a ticket. I was in the infield, and it was the wettest Derby ever. Then I went to Kentucky Downs for work, and I had that access like you were talking about too. But you still get that kind of close knit family feel there. It's not the extravaganza that is, the Kentucky Derby, which I think for a lot of people is much more glorious on TV than it is in person, especially if you're in the infield like I was. Do you have a favorite, memory or place to be or anything like that from, your years, whether it was working a race or, just going as a fan and having a good time?
Yeah, I just love Keeneland. I mean, I'm from the Lexington area, so I didn't really go there a lot until probably high school, and then high school and then into college, and ever since college, it's always been one of my favorite places. And I really like Keeneland in the fall too, like maybe like the early fall, kind of those first weekend or two of the fall meet, before it really gets too bad. But it's kind of 60 to 65 degrees, and they have that burgoo there. It's like a 8 different kinds of meat
Right.
all in one stew. And I've even last time I was there, they had it on it was like a burgoo hot dog. It was like a chili dog, but just like with burgoo instead of like a on a coney. So
Wow.
yeah, it was excellent.
I was gonna. It sounds good.
But Keeneland's always fun. I mean, people have big tailgates set up, and it's just so much. A lot of the area surrounding Churchill. I mean, I love Churchill Downs. It's a cool place to go, but a lot of Churchill surrounding it's just parking lot, whereas Keeneland it's all grass, and so it's just much more of like a, if you want to, toss a football around with your buddies or something like that, or just grill out and just enjoy the weather, that kind of thing. Before you go in for the track, that just seems like kind of the perfect place to be. But the first place I ever actually went to the races was a track in Cincinnati called River Downs. I don't know if either of you guys are ever familiar with that. It's since been torn down and then rebuilt as like one of those casino / racetracks called Belterra Park. And I've been there a couple times since. It's not really the same. When it was River Downs, it's just like this big grandstand with like no one in it, and like these horses that are running for like $2,500 purses. And you'd look at like the running lines on these horses, and it would say like 77 career starts, like 3 wins. Yeah, it'd just be outrageous. But my grandfather was that was his place to go. He was up in Dayton, Ohio, and so we would go to River Downs, and that's kind of where I first got into it. And of course, being there, you could get as close as you want. You go to the paddock or whatever, because I mean, no one there to stop you. But yeah, I mean, you can make just as much money, betting a race there as you can the Kentucky Derby. Payouts are their money counts the same, whether or not you're watching
Money spent the same.
maiden claimers or Grade 1.
My only horse racing experience is I covered harness racing. I was a reporter in Central Illinois for a year after undergrad, and I covered probably 70, 80 harness races because they would have 4 or 5 races a day, 5 days a week. And fun fact, this is gonna be weird. Kurt Becker, that is does announcing at Keeneland. Yeah. Kurt is from Altamont. Kurt was actually the announcer the first time I covered a harness race at Effingham in Central Illinois.
Oh, that's cool. He's excellent too.
Oh man, he's phenomenal. Whenever I got there, it was literally my first week on the job, and he like introduces me on the loudspeaker and starts like feeding information. And I'm like, I met this dude 10 minutes ago. Like how does he know all this? But yeah, that was my only experience, and it was interesting. I mean, it was people that had won. I remember one day I covered, I think, a woman who won 250 races, I think 300 races.
Okay.
And I mean, it had been people that's what they did during the summer. They did this little county fair circuit, and they would race 2-3 times a day, 5 days a week, go to the next one, make their money for the summer. And I'm like, man, that's a grind. But I mean, if that's what you love, that's what you love.
Yeah, and I have so much respect for those people. Not even just the thoroughbreds, but people work with the quarter horses or the harness racing stuff. I mean, you got to be really, really into it.
Yeah.
You dedicate your life to it, and there are a lot of people that are. I think that's awesome. And whenever you're making your money at the window or something, couldn't do it if it wasn't for those people who get up.
Exactly.
Way before I've ever thought about getting up and go out and put the work in.
Well, Jared's still awake, most likely. Like they're getting up while Jared is
overlaps with
yeah,
for
burning
real.
The midnight oil.
Brad, you mentioned the burgoo. That's a very Kentucky thing. When I think of the Kentucky Derby and Churchill Downs, a lot of people think of it too. The mint julep. This is a very hotly contested debate. Is the mint julep good?
I love it.
Oh my no!
Yeah. I know it's like it's the cool thing to say that like everyone hates it, but I love mint juleps. Now I guess it kind of depends on like how you're getting it, because like if you buy just like the pre-made mint julep mix, like it's probably like not the best. But if you have someone like actually a lot of bars in Louisville or other places like the Lexington, they'll do it for you, like handmade like that. And that's probably
Mine
my
was
second favorite
handmade.
way to. Oh, yours was handmade. And you
My, and
didn't like it?
I should preface by saying I'm not a mint person,
Okay,
which I could see being a hang up with a mint julep.
sure, yeah,
Yeah, I could see that being a little bit of an issue.
I'm with you, Brad.
yeah,
I think
no,
it's good. Like,
yeah,
I won't use a very expensive fancy bourbon for it. Like, I would rather have that, neat or on the rocks. But you know, I
yeah,
I like cheap
sure.
bourbon too.
Well, and I'm not really enough of like a bourbon snob. Like once you get past like the Jim Beam level, kind of into like that next like kind of Buffalo Trace Four Roses level. Once you get to
Yeah.
that point, I can't really tell the difference. So I can tell bad. I can tell bad really quick.
Ooh.
But as far as the good goes, it can, to be honest, it's mostly all the same to me. But no, I mean my favorite way to have bourbon is with Ale, which is my soft drink from Winchester.
That's a very
And that's
Winchester
the
thing to say.
that's exactly that's the hometown
Yeah.
answer. But
That's what
yeah,
Ed
Julep.
Marlowe drinks also. L8
Oh,
makers and
really?
L8.
Yeah.
Yeah, makers and L8. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Sounds
I'm more of a
that sounds
Woodford guy, not a sponsor, but
They
We'll
could
take
be.
them. We'll take them all. Just
sure.
not bad. L8, Woodford, all
Yeah,
of them.
yep, yep.
While we're on the subject of food and drinks, Brad,
Yeah.
if people don't know, I'm in the position now that you were in a few years ago. The year before, Elliot Pratt was the Western Kentucky beat writer at the Daily News. You've been on a lot of these same road trips that I've been on. You've liked some of the pictures of the barbecue that I've posted. Looking back at your time at the Daily News on the Western beat, traveling around, what are some of the memorable places you've stopped and, both city-wise and had a bite to eat? Because this is the Meet the Press podcast.
Yeah. So my favorite city on the Conference USA beat was El Paso. Like that place is spectacular. It's just like it's cool. They're cool. Like hiking type places you can go during the day. Like we went up to we took the tram to the top of Ranger Mountain. A bunch of us did. Where you can like see into Mexico and see all the four states, whatever it is. But just the food there. I mean it's just like it's the same as what you might order, at a Tex-Mex type place or Mexican restaurant here, but it's just tastes totally different. So
Yeah.
I loved El Paso, but yeah, anywhere in Texas. I mean, San Antonio, Dallas area, there's always good barbecue to be had, and I'd like to go into some of the other places like in Old Dominion. There was a place for seafood that I really liked, and
Was it Aw Shucks?
Birmingham Saw's Barbecue is one of my favorites, and yeah, try to
Was
get some
was
Cajun food when we went to Louisiana Tech. So yeah, you could that's Conference USA when it designed itself as this conference, 10 years ago after all the realignment, didn't prove to be a great setup as far as like actual mission of the conference goes, but as far as the food options went, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
was it you that recommended Ponchatoula's to me in
Yeah, I mean,
Ruston? Yeah,
I'm sure there were others that did, but yeah, no, that was always a cool spot.
that one. And
Ruston, there's not really a ton in Ruston as far as compared to some other stops in the Conference USA beat, so your options are limited. But yeah, Ponchatoula's is never fails.
right. Was the seafood place in Norfolk Aw Shucks?
Yeah.
Yep, I've been there a couple times now. So it's funny how the beat writers kind of just pass along these places to
Right.
go. But
I always thought Norfolk was a cool place too. It's you go to like those events at ODU and there's always huge crowds. Like the city seemed to really get behind which always kind of like blew my mind, like why they're not better than they are. Because
yeah,
they have it's just like football wise. Like look at all the athletes that have come out of that area, and then you look at their football team and they'd be like 6-6 or whatever. Like that's a program that should be top of the G5.
right. I was down at FIU in Miami, having the time of my life in Miami. And before the game, I was talking to one of Western's assistant coaches. I was like, man, how don't they get like these extremely great recruits here? Because this city's awesome. Like if I was an
Mm-hmm.
18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, I'd want to go to Miami over, maybe some of these other CUSA cities,
Sure,
just for the city
sure.
alone. But
Yeah, but then you like go to FIU's campus and then you see the football experience or the basketball experience or whatever, and then you
yep,
realize why they have trouble attracting kids to stay home and play there.
exactly. But Brad, we appreciate you hopping on the podcast and talking about the Kentucky Derby. Um, you want to give a shout out to how we can follow your work and all that, just to promote what you're doing.
Yeah, so horseracing.nation.com is the website. We have a whole team of people that are there at Churchill all week. I actually won't be there till Saturday. I actually graduate law school on Friday, so I'll have to hang down here until then. But then I'll make the trip up Friday night after all that. The ceremony Friday happens during the Kentucky Oaks, so I don't know. May or may not have my phone out watching that during some university VP is talking about donating to the school or something. Like we have a whole team of people that are there in Louisville this week, and throughout the year we have people based in New York and California. We're covering racing 365 days a year. So obviously, this next month or so, the Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont, all the races that surround those races. That's a great time of year for us. But, then even later in the summer, we get towards Saratoga and Del Mar, and getting towards Breeders' Cup in the fall. We'll have coverage of it all, and then then the Derby Trail start again, and we'll do the same thing next year.
Yeah, the sports never really ends. I find myself saying it'll slow down after this week, and that's been every week for about 6 years now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And your job, it gets to about what, like kind of like that third week of June through like the second week of July. That's kind of the sweet spot.
Yep. We're
but
almost
then, of course,
there.
it's too hot to go out and like enjoy doing anything. So.
Right. We're almost there, though. I'll try to enjoy it when we get there. But Brad, we appreciate you again hopping on. Tell Stephanie we said hello. Be sure to follow Brad's work and follow the Meet the Press podcast. You can go to meetthepresspodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back for our regular podcast, live Sunday night and on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, Monday morning. So be sure to follow along. Until then, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.